every year we are doing something different based off of what we found worked the previous year. So there's always a change. You're always going to be evolving, if you will. If you're staying the same, I think that's where, you should be asking some questions if we're not changing things.
Yvonne, transportation leaders everywhere tell me the same thing. We just can't find enough drivers. Yet, some transportation companies continue to build exceptional teams year after year, while others struggle to fill the same position. You've spent your career leading talent acquisition, supporting more than 25,000 DOT-regulated hires annually across one of the nation's largest transportation workforces. When you look across the organizations that you've supported, what do the highest performing recruiting organizations consistently do differently?
I think the companies that consistently achieve their goals do three things. They move fast, they make the process easy, and they create clear ownership. It really does level up to expectations.
And that's interesting. I love the clarity with which you communicated that. Why do you think so many companies miss that?
I think it probably depends on, do they have the time to really sit down and look at all of these things that they can really fine tune, right? Most of the time, organizations are trying to fill gaps that are critical to the business, right? And it is someone's likely doing it off the side of their desk along with their regular day job. It's really, really critical if you want recruiting to be successful that you make this part of your business, right? Not part of HR's function, but really a business unit within the organization that really is the backbone of the organization, right? And so you need a committed team. You need to have the right players and the right processes.
One of the things that I appreciate most about your perspective is that you've seen transportation recruiting from nearly every angle. The RPO, the BPO, the enterprise talent acquisition, technology, operations, and leadership. So let's unpack what you've learned and how transportation leaders can apply those lessons to build stronger recruiting organizations. So what changes operationally when an organization begins hiring at enterprise scale?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that happens is the shift from, moving just from individual contributors to technology, right? There comes a point when you're hiring at such volume that it cannot sit with just a hands-on team. You have to have the right technology, the right smart technology, right? The technology that helps automate and just achieve tasks that it would typically take, 4 to 8 hands to complete, right? So it really is understanding and optimizing what technology you're using, what processes you're using. But I'd say technology is the absolute key to hiring at large scale.
And with all the shifts that we've seen in the market with technology, what are some of those technology tools that you're like, hey, Ginger, here are the things that we've leveraged technology for that have really been helpful to us at scaling?
Yeah, I would say a CRM, right? Having a recruitment CRM is going to make all of the difference. It allows you to just take things to such next level. It allows you to do campaigning and mass communication and automations and just, things that, again, you would have to have a person to sit there and do this over and over and over again. So I would highly recommend a CRM. I would highly recommend a CRM that has automations and AI built into it. The more it can help you, it's only going to benefit the entire team.
Absolutely. And so when thinking about the recruiting metrics and the tracking, which recruiting metrics matter most to executive leadership?
Executives really want to know, are we meeting our hiring goals? Are we moving quickly? What and why are candidates falling out? What does it cost? and what's slowing down the process. Those are really the main things I think the executives are interested in hearing.
Absolutely. And you're navigating one of the nation's most complex hiring environments. So, what makes transportation recruiting fundamentally different than other industries?
I think it really would come down to the compliance and the safety piece. Those are such critical elements of our business, and, elements that, we cannot shy away from. They are at the front of our business. So, I definitely say that's a driver.
Absolutely. And understanding those safety requirements and DOT requirements, how do you balance compliance, safety, and an exceptional candidate experience?
And, luckily for myself, I've got an amazing counterpart, a compliance director that I work with, and her team supports my team. So we kind of work in tandem where, my team supports bringing in all of the candidates, giving them that world-class service coming in the door. And then we've got a dedicated post-offer compliance team that helps ensure we've got all our T's crossed and our I's dotted when it comes to the compliance and safety. And we call that our candidate experience specialist. That team helps just get their arms around these candidates in that post-offer process and help to ensure that we've got, all T's crossed.
So what I'm hearing is you've aligned recruiting with safety, with onboarding for a clear through line for the candidate experience.
That's right. Yes.
Yes, that's exceptional. That alignment takes a lot of effort internally. And just to see that you guys are doing that, definitely your results speak to that alignment. So what workforce trends should transportation leaders be preparing for? You mentioned at the top technology. So are there other technology trends, other workforce trends? What should transportation leaders be preparing for?
I think not just in transportation, but across the board, candidates are expecting a faster, easier, and just more transparent experience. They want to be able to apply from their phone. They want to be able to apply through text. They're looking for convenient ways. So I think we need to be ready as leaders to find more ways that we can meet the candidate at where they're at.
I absolutely agree. And so looking at these innovations, that strengthen recruiting performance and candidate experience, where has AI created the greatest impact within your recruiting organization?
Oh my gosh, AI has been a tremendous help for us. It has helped us to respond faster to candidates, schedule interviews, send reminders, answer basic questions. We've got a really cool chat bot on our website where you're allowed to, interact with it, and it will help, answer questions about benefits, values, open positions. So it really has helped us just, again, meet the candidates where they're at. Those candidates can ask questions at 1:00 in the morning and still get an answer. So it's great.
It allows people to engage when it makes sense for them. What parts of recruiting should always remain human?
I think at the end of the day, especially when it comes to a role that is so safety sensitive and transporting the most precious cargo in the world, we always need to be able to have that human interaction during that interview, right? And have that face-to-face conversation to really level set expectations about the role and just what we're looking for in our candidates, right? So that piece could never, ever be replicated by any AI, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I should say, because I don't think we would ever want that, right? I don't think anybody would necessarily be comfortable with AI saying, yes, I think you're qualified to, drive this bus filled with absolutely precious cargo.
Absolutely. And so at Hire Truckers, we serve the nation's largest fleets in recruiting truck drivers and other talent. And so share with our audience, you kind of teased it out there and we can see it in your background, but we serve fleets who handle all types of cargo and freight and unique shipments. Tell us about that precious cargo that you guys are transporting.
Yeah, so we have the most amazing cargo in the world. I will say this time and time again. We get to take the most precious, beautiful students to and from school every day and get them back home to their parents or off to their school to start, the most important part of their day, which is their education. We also get to take them on field trips and charter trips. So it's really, really exciting. It's great work. It's, we get to be the heroes that kind of start and end a kiddo's day. So it's absolutely amazing.
And so your cargo, the precious children, and all of us have some type of connection, whether it's children, nieces, nephews, friends, family, our own children, that spend some time usually on a school bus, either coming and going to school or on a field trip. So thinking about the many unique pieces of cargo that the transportation moves, from the heavy haul and safety and refrigerated, it is true, everything by truck, our groceries, our household supplies, the big dirt moving equipment that is transforming the roads here in Austin, Texas, trying to keep up with the growth. So thinking about all the different type of cargo and all the different recruiting solutions, what advice would you give to leaders who are evaluating AI-enabled recruiting solutions for their valuable cargo?
I'd say first identify what the problems you're trying to solve are. I always say just play with it because you can't break it. And I think there's a misconception around AI that it's going to break, and you can quite literally ask it and populate many ideas or suggestions in there, and it will start just helping you kind of get your wheels spinning. So I would say, don't necessarily buy anything. Start small, start using the free resources just to get yourself acclimated with it, but then identify really what you're trying to solve within your business and within your organization. And then, quite literally ask it, right? Give it some different ideas about how you approach things. What are some of the challenges that you see, and let it kind of start spitballing with you. I think that is the easiest way to start.
And I really appreciate that. I've seen the value in that. Of course, we're a technology company, and 3 years ago, I think it was about 3 years ago now, our owner and founder said, I want everybody on the team experimenting and using maybe 10 to 15 minutes, interacting with AI. And of course, we've been using AI on the backside, machine learning, for more than a decade. But now it's become very common in the public to talk about AI, not just with technology companies using it on the backside. And so he did the very thing that you're saying. He challenged everyone on our team, spend 10 to 15 minutes a day experimenting and interacting with the AI tools that are out there. And it's been amazing how it's propelled not only the technical side of our team forward, but all parts of our organization forward. Hiring CDL drivers isn't about more leads. It's about better ones. That's why serious carriers partner with Hire Truckers by Trucking Clicks. We don't sell ads. We bring clear strategy, straight talk, and a relentless focus on quality drivers. Even in a tough market, our clients see improved performance month over month by optimizing smarter and making every hiring dollar work harder. For honest insight, sharper targeting, and results that you can trust, visit truckingclicks.com or call 512-982-0816. Hire Truckers by Trucking Clicks. Clarity, courage, results. I want to pivot now from that experimentation and just encouraging people. Like you said, you can't break it, use it, learn about it, be a part of the process. But what I see in the results that I'm seeing in what you guys are running and what we're doing is operational excellence. So you've actually used AI as a transformative tool in recruiting, and you've turned it into a competitive advantage. You've significantly improved time to fill, candidate engagement, and cost per hire. What leadership decisions made the biggest difference for you guys?
I think part of what we did different is, again, mapping out those expectations. We defined exactly how quickly candidates should be contacted, how soon interviews should happen, how often candidates should receive updates, who owned each step. I mean, we really were very thoughtful and intentional with planning every step of what a candidate goes through, right, in our life cycle. And with intention, we tried to be fast and thoughtful. Where we could optimize things, we did. And where we had to pivot from certain things, we did, right? And I think that was the biggest thing, is kind of, every year, obviously for school bus, we have seasonality. So every summer we start our summer hiring and get ready for that whole year. But after each summer hiring ends, the first thing that we do is kind of take a step back and say, what went amazingly well and where did we have the most heartburn? And then what was that heartburn and why? And then how can we approach that differently in the upcoming year? And so since I've been here year after year, we really have optimized and pivoted our process at least 3 times. At least every year we are doing something different based off of what we found worked the previous year. So there's always a change. You're always going to be evolving, if you will. If you're staying the same, I think that's where, you should be asking some questions if we're not changing things.
100%. If you're staying the same, you're being left behind, and innovation and adaptability and just that strategic process improvement is what you guys have done with excellence. That's what I hear. And so how do recruiting leaders earn credibility with operations and executive leadership? Because change and innovation have elements of friction and it's uncomfortable. So how do you earn that credibility with each of the verticals, operations and executive leadership, for example?
Well, for me, I'm in the position where I'm lucky enough to be able to rely on the data, right? And I'm able to really earn my credibility by understanding the business needs and the data that we have to tell that story, right? And then bringing solutions for each of those kind of pain points that we're seeing. I think we always understand that there's actions that need to be taken, and I think right now what we see is 9 times out of 10, you've identified 10 plates in the air and 9 of them are priorities, right? So you really have to be able to show that you understand and can action what those priorities are, be able to solve for, the plates that are falling out of the air, and then be able to show that in the data ultimately.
Yeah, I hear you. Prioritizing the 9 plates, that is a skill in and of itself, and allowing the data to guide you in that. Very important, and something everyone can look at their organization and see where they can apply that and where they can improve. So along this line, what separates high performing recruiting organizations from the average ones?
I think probably consistency. I think, the teams who are consistent, they move quickly, they communicate, they follow up well, they're keeping their hiring managers informed. They quite honestly have their arms around everything. And they're consistently having their arms around everything. I think it really is that consistency, at least for my team. We have shown year over year that, again, we're not just consistent, but we're better than we were that previous year. So, applying that thoughtfulness and those consistent layers are just going to help you get and stay ahead.
And what I'm hearing there is the connection between the AI, the process, and the human connection. Like you really are going faster, more efficiently because of the AI, because of the process improvement, the after action reviews, and genuinely having that continuous improvement centered around a better driver experience, a better candidate experience. That's incredible. Your results, to your point, the data tells the story, and just what a great job you and your team are doing. So what I want our audience to see is there are lessons that every fleet can learn from school transportation. So recruiting purpose-driven professionals is one of transportation's most trusted roles. So what makes recruiting school bus drivers unique?
Again, the cargo, right? And the fact that, these drivers have to be trusted not only by the cargo, the beautiful children that they're transporting every day, but the parents, the communities, the teachers. And there's so much more that's involved in it, and at times they have to be more than a school bus driver, right? They are sometimes the only person who can identify that something, might be off with a child, or, they sometimes have to be the only smile a child can see that day, right? So they really need to bring a level of professionalism, but also a level of caring, right? You really have to be an empathetic, caring person to hire or to drive school buses and to work with these children all day long. So one of the things that we're really looking for is that compassion, right? That care, that willingness to, to just protect and serve, essentially.
Absolutely. And so when you think about protecting and serving, I can see that there's an element of every professional driver that is moving a commercial vehicle down the road. We've all seen the dangerous things that individuals have done on the road, or the unexpected. And so our professional drivers, whether they're in a school bus or they're a CDLA, driving one of the big rigs with a heavy load, they're not only keeping themselves safe, they're keeping their community safe. They're keeping families and children safe when we're going up and down the highways on school buses or in personal vehicles. And so when we think about that importance of safety culture throughout the entire transportation industry, what lessons from transporting children can strengthen recruiting across all trucking, all commercial fleets?
Yeah. So, I think one is just not only recruiting people who have, the qualifications. And again, I know not every trucking or fleet transportation company is able to train, but, look for somebody who has some of those transferable skills that are going to be able to pick things up a little bit more easier than others. But on the alternative side of that, if you do have the resources to be able to train, you will get not only a well-trained employee, but also a loyal employee, because you've given them something that no other organization has. You've invested in them, right? You've shown that you care about them and their future, so much so that you've taught them a skill set that they're going to be able to carry with them through the rest of their life and their career. So I think it will also give you that loyal employee as well.
And that's a market differentiator. When you can grow them up from within your organization, they fit your culture. And then the relationship goes both ways. To your point, they value being a part of that story. So what advice would you give transportation leaders today who are facing recruiting challenges? Because recruiting challenges are real. What advice would you give them?
I would say, one, know your profile, right? Know what that profile's challenges would be. Are candidates being contacted quickly? Are they getting the warm and fuzzy feeling, right? Are we giving them all the feels in that initial contact? Because we also have to remember, whoever that first point of contact is, that's the representation of who we are and what the experience is going to be. So make sure that you have the right person doing those outreaches. And then just be sure that we're not, lingering with decisions. It is a very competitive market right now. And the difference between getting an interview today and an offer tomorrow could mean 10 more applications get completed. If you've got the candidate that you like and they're in front of your face at the interview, don't wait. Offer them on the spot, because if they walk out of there, they're going to go do another application. And then when you do extend your offer, they may or may not take it then, right? So you might have missed your shot.
That's excellent. So, Yvonne, I want to finish where we began. We started today's conversation by asking what separates the highest performing recruiting organizations from everyone else. After everything you've learned leading one of the largest transportation recruiting operations in the country, what's the one mindset shift transportation leaders need to make if they want recruiting to become a true competitive advantage instead of a constant challenge?
I would say, again, recruiting can't do it alone. It's going to take the entire team, operations, HR, safety. We all have to work together, have clear expectations, and move with urgency, and know where you are at all times against that goal. So that would be my key takeaway.
That's gold. If you could leave every transportation executive, recruiter, and operations leader listening with one piece of advice about building the workforce of the future, what would it be?
I would say that we focus a lot on recruiting and bringing people in. And I would love to see as much energy and attention around retention, right? Let's work on retaining the folks that we have today, keeping them happy, keeping our culture right, so that we don't have to continue kind of refilling that bucket, right? Retention is equally as important.
Absolutely. And what's a retention hook that you have found and implemented within your organization?
I think for us, it really is our career pathing. We invest so deeply in our employees and just the career that they can have with us. And so at the very early onset, we are really trying to show that from not only the interview and application phase, but when they're on site and they're in the role, we are training them and developing them for their future career here. And that's helped us to retain very well.
Absolutely. In our initial interview at Hire Truckers, we have career pathing questions that we are asking of every individual candidate, no matter what role they're going to serve within our organization. And so having those career pathing conversations and questions from like conversation one and then following it all the way through and delivering, I could not agree with you more on just the importance of that for retention. So thank you for sharing that with us. That's excellent. So Yvonne, thank you for sharing your experience, your leadership, and your passion for advancing transportation recruiting. It comes through in everything that we've talked about today. So one of my biggest takeaways from today's conversation is this: the organizations that consistently attract great drivers, they aren't simply working harder. They're leading and serving differently. They treat recruiting as a strategic business function. They invest in people. They embrace technology with purpose. And I see that they are building systems that create a lasting competitive advantage. Thank you for joining the Hire Truckers podcast. If you found value in today's conversation, subscribe, share this episode with a colleague, and join us the next time as we continue exploring the people, the ideas that are shaping the future of transportation recruiting. Until then, I want you to remember, great fleets don't just find great drivers. They build organizations where drivers choose to belong.